It's one of those mysteries of life, of what exactly everybody's skin tone is. Gleamy, that's not a word, is it? Ambient, da da da. Nobody says, Des, you must wear a highlighter. I'm so excited for today's video because I'm going to be talking about my top 3 makeup products in every category, and I'm doing it with my lovely friend Tina from Tina's Beautiful Journey, who I've made friends with about a year ago, I think, on YouTube. And I'm so delighted because she reached out to me and suggested we do a collab, and I'm really delighted to be doing it today. So let me tell you a little bit about Tina before we jump into the top 3 products. So Tina's been, I think, on YouTube maybe 18 months, something like that. And she does a lot of makeup videos, mostly makeup and mostly tutorials. She's got a great selection of tutorials on her channel, mostly using drugstore makeup, although she does use some high-end as well. And she does a little bit of lifestyle as well. She does a little bit of fashion, some decluttering, which is very interesting to me because I know that I need to do some decluttering. And she's just an all-round really interesting woman to watch on YouTube. And because she's got a background in theatre and dance, she's extremely good at presenting. She's really fluent, she's really natural, she just explains things incredibly well. In fact, I think the first time I found her was when she was showing how to use some sort of new stamping eyeliner, I think. And she just explained it so well, and I think she's an absolutely wonderful person. She's warm, she's witty, and really great to watch, and I'm just delighted to be doing this collab with her. So settle back into your armchair, get yourself a coffee or a glass of wine, depending on when you're watching this. Sit back and let me talk you through my top 3 makeup products in every category. And for me, that's 12 categories. So without further ado, let's crack on. So let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And we're going to start with foundations. Now, I have had a real problem, as you can probably imagine, picking my top 3 foundations. And in the end, I had to go with foundations that I just use regularly. They're kind of my holy grail. So I'm just going to quickly tell you which foundations aren't in my top 3 and why. So the first foundation that isn't in my top 3 is the Lisa Eldridge. I love Lisa Eldridge, I love her foundations, but they're not as easy and quick to apply as the ones that are in my top 3. Next one I haven't got in my list, although I do really like it, is the L'Oreal True Match. And I think it's a great foundation, but it's not one I've been reaching for of late, so that's why I haven't picked it, but I do love it. And equally, I didn't pick the number 7 Lift and Luminate, which I also love, but I just, again, haven't been picking it of late. So those are the 3 I haven't picked. Now let me tell you which my top 3 actually are. And I'm going to start with the one that I've got on, and this is the Max Factor Miracle Touch. Now I've talked about this recently. I did a video where I compared it to the KVD Good Apple Balm Foundation. This is a cream foundation. So this is an incredibly reasonably priced drugstore foundation. Let me swatch a bit for you. And actually, just before I swatch it, let me tell you why I've picked it. So it's a cream foundation, and for me, even though I've got really textured skin, I think it looks natural and it's really quick and easy to apply. So my skin tone is kind of a mixture of colours. I would say it's a neutral undertone, leaning a little bit cool perhaps, because my veins are quite green. I don't know if that's coming up on the screen. So they are a bit olivey. So neutral olive, but I don't know, it's very difficult. It's one of those mysteries of life, of what exactly everybody's skin tone is, isn't it? It's never quite as straightforward as you would like it to be, which is why we often have to buy lots of different shades. Anyway, this is the shade I'm in, which is, it'd be helpful if I told you what it was. So the shade I'm in, helpfully, is something like ZD3, but all the details of all the foundations and everything I talk about will be listed and linked below. But I would say that's a sort of light medium colour, and I'll show it to you as compared to the other 2 foundations. So the next foundation that I've chosen that is in my top 3 is the Nars, and that's the light reflecting foundation. Now, funnily enough, when I first reviewed this, I think it was about a year ago, or maybe at the beginning of, it must have been in 2022 when it came out. My video was titled Glowy or Greasy, and I wasn't sure about it, but actually I've rediscovered it recently and I do really love it, which is why I've got it in my top 3, because I think, generally speaking, I'm going for relatively light coverage at the moment. Right, let me swatch a little bit for you. I've actually put the cream foundation on my hand because it wasn't really showing up terribly well on my wrist, on my arm. So, gosh, the colour difference. Look at the shade difference. That's so weird, isn't it? So the bottom one, the cream foundation, is much... it's probably more neutral, I would say, perhaps, than the Patagonia from Nars, but it's a completely different consistency. As you can see, it's much more liquidy, if you like, the Nars. But I love it. I think the coverage is lovely. It's not too light, but it is on the light side, and it's definitely glowier than the cream foundation. But like I say, it depends on your mood. It depends on the climate, what the weather's like outside, and what you feel like applying. But I do really love the Nars. And actually, I think if I had to pick an all-round foundation, I would probably pick the Nars, because you can always build up coverage with a concealer. So if you had to pick one out of the three, and I'm going to show you the third one in a second, I'd probably go with the Nars, just because it is a bit buildable, and it's also kind of dewy and gleamy. That's not a word, is it? You know what I mean. And finally, my third in my top 3 foundations is the Hourglass Ambient, and that'll be no surprise to any of you who've watched my channel before. Now, this is medium to full, but I think it's medium, actually. I know it says medium to full, but personally I think it's medium. Now, I'm in the shade 7.5. Now that's really interesting. Look at that. It's a very similar shade to the Nars. I mean, they did try an 8 on me, and I probably could have worn an 8. How interesting. I've never bothered swatching them before all next to each other, but there you go. So you can see that the coverage is a little bit fuller than the, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, it's a little bit heavier than the Nars. But it's a wonderful foundation. It gives great coverage, and it's the only foundation that I've ever had 2 compliments about. No one's ever complimented me on my foundation. Having said that, they said my skin looked great, which is really nice. And having said that, one was a close friend and one was my daughter, but mostly neither of them would ever give compliments unless they really meant them. So I really took that as a guide to the fact that I was wearing a good foundation. So moving on to concealers, and I've got 1 drugstore and 2 high-end. And let's go with the drugstore first, because actually I've nearly finished it, I think. And that is the e.l.f. Camo Concealer. Now, I know some mature women on YouTube find it a bit too heavy, or it settles too much into fine lines, but I really like it. The key thing is only use a little bit of it. And actually what I usually do, and there it is, it's a really big fat doe foot, is I put a little bit on my hand and then I pick it up and dot it around my eye. So there it is. I'm in the shade Medium Sand. And I just think it's a really great concealer. It doesn't settle into fine lines straight away. Everything settles into fine lines ultimately. But as long as I set it with setting powder, then it works really, really well. Now, the next 2 concealers were suggested by Andrea Ali, who I absolutely love, who's a makeup artist on YouTube. And she first recommended the Makeup Forever Ultra HD Concealer, which she used on her mature model a few months ago, and I actually tried to replicate the makeup that she did, and I'll link that video down below if you'd like to see that. So she used this Makeup Forever concealer, and it is lovely and light. It's a small doe foot. It's a small doe foot applicator. Now that's a slightly yellower tone, perhaps, or a deeper tone than the e.l.f. In fact, it's much deeper. The e.l.f. is quite light, really, even though it says Medium Sand. And I think, again, it's a beautiful concealer. You can build it up if you want. It doesn't settle straight away into fine lines. But like I say, that for me is not an issue. I just want to know that I can apply it as lightly or as heavily as I want, and it will go on and stay on. That's really all I'm interested in. And the third one, I've got a little mini, was this Hourglass Vanish concealer. I managed to get a little mini. I think it was about 10 quid, because I thought, well, I'll just see what it's like. And let me, again, there's a little tiny doe foot. We'll just pop that on there. You see, that's much lighter. The thing is, to be honest, don't really notice this when I'm putting it on. As long as it kind of brightens my under eye, I don't really mind. So we've got the e.l.f., which actually is a lot cooler, isn't it? Then we've got the Makeup Forever, and then the Hourglass. And there you go. So they're all great concealers. They all do the job. and I love them. Now we come to setting powders, and honestly this was really quite difficult because my absolute holy grail is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Filter. And as you can see, it's incredibly well used. I've hardly got any left. I must buy another one. And this is just my holy grail. I love it. It does exactly what it should do. It sets my under eye concealer. I don't really use it on the rest of my face. I tend to use it on my under eye. And actually I should have said I do use my concealer on my eyelids as a primer as well. But this just works an absolute treat. Once set down, I mean, yes, it will move eventually, but it really does stay in place and I don't get cakiness around my eyes. And given that you can see I've got lots and lots of lines, I think it does a beautiful job. It's obviously very finely milled. Now, because we're doing the top three, if I couldn't have this, and if I hadn't bought, and if I didn't buy another one of these, the other two I would use are the L'Oreal True Match, which I bought as a sort of, let me see if it's any good kind of thing, because it's drugstore. And that's it there. I'm in the shade, God knows, was some convoluted name, isn't it? 76U500. That's really helpful, L'Oreal, thanks. And finally, I've chosen the Hourglass Ambient Infinity Powder, this one here. Now, it has to be said, I don't love it under my under eyes. I think it's a beautiful powder, but I'm just not sure about the illumination of my under eyes, if you know what I mean. I want them to stay matte. I mean, I want them to brighten, but I don't really want them to illuminate, as it were. So we've got the Hourglass, the L'Oreal, and the Charlotte. And I would definitely go with the Charlotte if I had to choose, but I could live with all three if I had to. So let's talk about blushes now. And I've got one cream blusher and two palettes. And the cream blusher is by Revolution and it's called, I think, something like Bear. I'll put the details down below for you. It's absolutely beautiful and I really love it. It's what I'm wearing today. It's got a really lovely feel to it. It's in a stick, which I really like, so it's very quick and easy to apply. And it almost looks like you've got highlighter on as well, because it's got a real luminosity about it, and I absolutely love it. And I will swatch them, all the blushes, for you in a moment. The next blusher palette, which I absolutely adore, is a recent acquisition, which I was sent by Stylevena, and it's this palette here. It's called Meme. I'm Meme. Again, all the details will be down below for you, and you will have a discount code for this particular one, because I was given one back in January when I first did the video about the products from Stylevena, and I think it's still valid until the end of March. Anyway, I absolutely love it. This is the standout product of all the Stylevena products they sent to me. It's the only one I use all the time. Now, the reason I use it partly is because I love running my brush across the three colours and using it as a kind of a blusher bronzer effect, which I also do with palette number 3, which is the Pillow Talk Charlotte Tilbury blush. I think it's Chic to Cheek. Chic to Cheek. It's got that sort of bronzy blushery effect, which I really like. And I use this all the time in the summer. I bought it in Sephora when I was on holiday in France, and I just wore it and wore it. But I've actually been doing the same with the Meme palette. As you can see, they're kind of a bit in a similar vein, if you know what I mean. They've got a mixture of colours, and they're both absolutely great palettes. Obviously, the Stylevena is very affordable. The Charlotte Tilbury is not affordable. It's affordable. If you've got the money, it's expensive. It's high end. And the Revolution blush is also quite affordable. I think, I can't remember the price, but that's a very good drugstore brand. So I've swatched them all in preparation because I knew I was going to make a pig's ear of it otherwise. So let me just show you what we've got here. So this is the cream blusher in the middle. And here we've got the Charlotte Tilbury, 2 colours. And up above here, we've got the 3 colours from the Meme palette. So those are my top 3 blushes. Right, let's talk about bronzers now. I haven't been using bronzers very much at all in the last few months because, as I've just mentioned, sorry, eating my hair, because I've just mentioned, I am using the blushes as bronzers, kind of, unless I'm using the Revolution, which is on its own. But I think in the winter, I just don't feel inclined to wear a bronzer, really. And I know I'll go back to them as we come into spring, summer. So the first one you will see, and if you've been watching my channel from way back when, which is nearly 2 years now, is the Bobbi brand Stonestreet, and as you can see, incredibly well used. It's just a great all-round bronzer. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I've got a slightly cool toned or at least neutral colour skin, and so I tend to want to use a bronzer that doesn't have any orange in it, that tends to be a little bit cool, and I would say this one does. So let me swatch a little bit for you. That's it there. So, I mean, it's about as cool as you can get on a bronzer. A lot of bronzers aren't cool, as kind of the name almost implies. But this one gives a pretty good fist of it, so to speak. Now, the second bronzer I want to talk about is a Milani, and it's this Silky matte bronzer, which was all over YouTube last year, I think it was, and I got sucked into buying it, and I love it. In fact, it looks like something you'd want to eat, doesn't it? I often say that about some of my makeup. It looks really biscuity, which I really like. I think I may have used that word before. So let me swatch it for you. It feels beautifully creamy, and again, it's a different shade. In fact, I might almost say it's more neutral than the Bobbi Brown Stonestreet, but a really lovely product. I don't know how much it is. I think Milani are sort of medium price. They're not exactly, well, they are drugstore because you can find them in Boots here in the UK, but they're at the higher end, maybe a bit like Elf. They're not super cheap, like say Wet n Wild or something. And finally, we do have a mini, which I'm glad I got because I'll never use this up, and that's the Hourglass Ambient diffuser bronzer, a light bronzer. So this is actually the lightest one, I think it, but let me swatch it for you because it's got those paler sort of yellowy outsides. I thought it would be quite good, and I think it is cool toned. There it is. So I think all of those three, it's really interesting when I look at myself speaking to you, you can see how the Stonestreet is definitely the darkest. And I would say probably the Milani is in the middle, and then you've got the the Hourglass, but they're all beautiful shades. And if your skin is neutral like mine, then you probably find one of those shades would suit you. Now we come to highlighters. Now, it's taken me a while to get used to wearing highlighters, and actually get used to, I don't have to wear them. Nobody says, Des, you must wear a highlighter. But because I love watching YouTube, and, you know, I probably started watching YouTube about, I don't know, 10 years ago now. You watch YouTubers and you think, oh, you watch makeup YouTubers and they're wearing highlighter and you think, oh, I wonder whether I should have a go. Anyway, I do like wearing it, but actually what I find quite a lot now is with my, well, not all three of them, but with my sort of favourite, my most used one is the Charlotte Tilbury. I do tend to use this as a primer. Now, you may have noticed I haven't mentioned primers, and that's because I don't really wear a primer. Sorry, my hair is sticking to my face. That's because I don't usually wear a primer, but I have started to wear sometimes the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, which has been around for years. And in fact, this one's been around for years, and I'm still nowhere near finishing it. It really does work very well as a primer because your makeup goes on really smoothly over it and it just gives a little extra glow. I probably wouldn't wear it with the Nars Light Reflecting Foundation, but it is a lovely primer if you want an extra glow. I would wear it under the Hourglass or under the cream foundation that I've got on today. Now, I love this one, but I want to show you another one which I am actually wearing as a primer today, and that's the Lisa Eldridge, and this is a new one, or new to me. When I went to the pop-up a few months, when did I go? Must have been, gosh, in November. I don't know where the time's gone. I think it was November. Or maybe it was January, actually. No, maybe not. Maybe earlier this year. I ended up buying this because you know what it's like. You're in the store. You know, how often do you get to go into a Lisa Eldridge store? Hardly ever. So I decided to get this. And actually the assistant suggested that I get this shade. And just before I swatch them, let me tell you about my e.l.f. highlighter, which I also really like. And this is a kind of a substitute for, I used to have the Becca highlighter before they went out of business. I think it was called Champagne Pop. And this is quite a dupe for that, I would say. Now, again, I haven't used it all that much, but I do really like it. And again, if it was a desert island and I could only pick one, or I could only have this one, I would happily have it. So let me swatch that for you. So that's the colour there. It's nice and cool. It's got a very slight pinky tone to it. This is the Lisa, which is a bit more yellowy. And this is the Charlotte, which I think is also quite pinky. Yes, you can see that the e.l.f. at the bottom is the pinkiest of the three. The middle one is the Lisa, which is a much yellower toned highlighter, and then the top one is a kind of rosy, with a little bit of gold in it, but they are absolutely beautiful. Now let's talk about eyeshadows, and this was really difficult because of late I've only been reaching for one palette just because I've been getting dressed in a hurry, I suppose, or getting made up in a hurry, and it's the MAC 9-pan palette, which I bought, well, must be a couple of years ago now. I did a video where I used these palettes about 18 months ago, I think, on Bonfire Night. It's just a great palette. It's got some fantastic neutral colours which are right up my alley, and to be honest, I could use most of them. Just to talk about palettes for a moment before I show you my next palette. I don't really like shimmers. I'm not a shimmery girl. I just find them really difficult to deal with, and so I tend to shy away from them. I want mattes and plenty of them. So this is why my second palette, which I must admit I haven't reached for lately, but you can see that it's incredibly well used. Ooh, I can just open it. Is this one, which is the Morphe by Madison Beer Artistry, Channel Surfing Artistry palette, which I fear may be discontinued because I can't find it anywhere. But I just wanted to show you the palette as an example of a brilliant palette with some great colours in it. However, it is a big palette and I don't use all the colours. But what I like about it, I tend to use these pinkier and straying into the sort of warmer tones here, but sort of this lot, I wouldn't use the yellowy ones on this side. I like the fact that it's got a really dark brown, but almost black colour here, and the same over there. So those are the colours that I gravitate towards, and probably an ABH palette would have these type of colours in it now. But actually I have found an Urban Decay palette that looks very similar, which I'll link below. But I absolutely love this palette and I have been using it, so I've picked it because it's a palette. Again, if I was stuck on a desert island, I could only pick one palette. I probably would pick this one because it's got so many different colours and you could experiment with it. Excuse me, I've had a terrible runny nose and a bit of a cold for the last 2 weeks, so excuse me if I'm a bit gravelly. My final eyeshadow is this beautiful Lisa Eldridge liquid. I think it's called Liquid Luster. And I bought this around Christmas time and I did a video where I used it. And you know what? I have used this in the daytime as well. It's not just a nighttime one. That is the colour. It's absolutely beautiful. I'll put the details of my video where I showcased it down below, because if I start swatching all these eyeshadows, we'll be here till kingdom come. It's a really beautiful eyeshadow and it does last. And again, if I was stuck on a desert island, I could live with just that one eyeshadow because you can deepen it, you can put more on it. It sets quite quickly, but it is an absolutely beautiful colour and a beautiful consistency, and I really love it. So let's talk about brows. Now I tend to use this palette for my eyebrows quite a lot. In fact, I'll show you which shade I use because I don't like my brows to look too heavy. So I tend to use this one, which I know looks really light, but you can see it's kind of a taupey colour. And the reason I use that, in fact, it goes back to years ago. I used to use a Bobbi brown taupe on my eyebrows as well because I don't want to look too brown, too heavy. But if I wasn't going to use that, the other brow products that I like are these. So I've got the Huda Beauty Bomb Brows, which is all my latest videos feature this. And I absolutely love it. I like it because it's more of a, well, it's a gel. So it's not a powder, and it's got a really nice little applicator and you can brush them up. In fact, usually what I do is I'll paint on the brows first with the colour and then let that dry, and then I'll fluff them up with the brush. Or I might just fluff them up depending on the look I'm going for, if I don't want to look too made up. But my other two favourites are the Bobbi Brown Perfectly Defined Long Wear Brow Pencil, which has a retractable pencil like that. It's lovely and waxy and very easy for me to apply given my cat handiness, and it's got a handy brush on the other end. And then if we're going drugstore, I've also got the Revolution pencil, which again is retractable, and that also has a handy brush on the other end. Now this one, the point of the pencil is a lot finer than the Bobbi Brown, so this one might take me a little bit longer, but it is nice and waxy and I do really like it. Now again, if I couldn't choose and I was just given this one, I could manage perfectly well with it. Now let's talk about eyeliner. My absolute go-to eyeliner, the one I use nearly every day, is the Beauty Pie Gel Liner in Turkish Coffee. But before I discovered this eyeliner, I used to use the Liliners. Now I'm cheating a bit here because I've got two Liliners in two different shades and one Beauty Pie because they're the only ones I've got. So I can't pretend that I've got another liner just to make three, if you know what I mean. But both these, I've got the liner in black, and I've got it in, I think it's called Cashmere Noir or Noir Cashmere. And the brown is in brown denim. Why it's called brown denim, nobody knows. And the Turkish Coffee by Beauty Pie. So I'll quickly swatch. This is absolutely beautifully soft pencil, this one, whereas these two are slightly harder, but they are retractable, which is, oh, actually, no, they're not really. They're quite gel-like. That's the Beauty Pie at the bottom. Middle one is the brown denim, and the top is the black. But they are really good quality. They're very reasonably priced, and I love them all. Right, and now for mascaras. And I've actually got 3 in an honourable mention, if I'm allowed that. So I've got the Lash Clash by YSL, which you know I love if you've watched this channel before. When I discovered it in the summer, and it was purely by chance, I was in Sephora in France, and I just wanted to buy something. And I thought, oh, I haven't had a YSL product for a long time. And I absolutely adore it. I've also got at the drugstore end the Maybelline Sky High, which I also love. Now let me just tell you why I love them. This one really gives Vavavoom lashes without doubt. I mean, yes, they might get a bit clumpy, but it's what I've got on today, and it's really quick and easy to apply, and you just get the full Vavavoom straight away. Now the Maybelline Sky High isn't quite as Vavavoom, but it does separate them really well, and you can apply obviously more than one coat. And again, it's quick and easy to use, and I do love it. Now I've actually got a stash of mascaras, which I was using quite a bit of until I found the Lash Clash. So when I knew I was filming this, I went back to my stash and I thought, let me just see whether I still like some of them, because actually they hadn't been used that much, so I thought they'd still be in good nick, as it were. And actually this is the Caution Extreme Lash Mascara by Hourglass. And again, this is a little bit similar to the Lash Clash, in fact very similar, and I do really like it, so it's definitely worth a try. And you can get minis of these, but I'm going to come to a mini now as an honourable mention, because I do think the issue with minis is you don't get the full effect, obviously, of the wand, because you're only getting a mini wand. But my lovely friend, she knows who she is, I'm sure, told me about Rare Beauty's mascara, and so I thought I'd get the mini. And I have to say, I do really like it. I love a fat brush, and this one has got a fat brush. The only thing is, because the holder is so small, it's not as easy to put the mascara on, in my view, as it would be with the full size. But I do like it, and I think when I've finished it, or when I finish one of my other mascaras, I'll get the full size just to get the full effect, as it were. In fact, let me just quickly show you the Maybelline brush, which I didn't show you, because this is a rubber brush, which is sort of counterintuitive for me, because I tend to prefer the full, you know, like a big fat brush. But actually this does really give a good lash. So I think this is if you're going for slightly more natural, but it definitely elongates them and separates them as well. So we finally come to lipstick. And if you watch my channel before, you'll know that I love a nude lip. And I did a video recently about my 5 favourite nude lipsticks, and I will link that down below for you. But in case you haven't seen it, let me just reiterate. ABH in Dirty Rose and Wet n Wild in Dusty Rose are liquid lipsticks. I'm wearing ABH today. I absolutely love them. I will swatch them for you in a second. But my third one is Elisa Eldridge. I had to choose Elisa Eldridge, and I've done quite a few videos on Elisa Eldridge lipsticks, but let me swatch this one for you. This is Velvet Muse, and I picked this one. I could have picked any, to be honest, but I picked this one because it's a really good everyday lipstick. So it's kind of slightly warmer than I would normally wear, but it's not too in your face, because I do worry sometimes. I don't like, which is why I reach for these, I think. I don't particularly feel confident wearing a strong lip on a regular basis, but I will do it and I will blot it. But let me just show you how it compares. I've hardly got any left of my ABH. In fact, it featured in my empties, which, I mean, it is nearly empty, as is the Catsuit by Wet n Wild, which is this one. But you can see the tones are very, very similar, aren't they? You've got the Lisa on the bottom, followed by the ABH, followed by the Wet n Wild. Now, if I'm allowed, well, I'm going to allow myself because it's my channel, I'm going to choose also as an honourable mention the Huda Beauty liquid lipstick, because I just love a liquid lipstick. I just find they last really well. Yes, you do end up with a little rim around your lips as if you've left your lip liner on, or you've made it too harsh, but I don't mind that, it's absolutely fine. And this is in Perfectionist. This is the Huda Beauty. And as I look at that, I think, Des, why are you buying the same shade of lipstick all the time? But I think that's what we do, isn't it? I mean, if we know something suits us, and particularly when you're over 60 like me and you've got wrinkled skin, I don't think personally, especially with my colouring, that I want a huge kind of throw it out there kind of look. What I really want are relatively muted tones with a strong lash and a really simple lip that doesn't make me look like death warmed up, but gives me a colour, but without looking too... That's what I think anyway. One more product, and I've only got one. I have got other lip pencils, but I've chosen one because this is the one I reach for all the time. And I'll tell you for why. Because it's got a strong pigment. Now, having said that, I don't wear a lot of strong pigmented things. What I really like to do with this pencil, which is by Lisa Eldridge, and it's in Pompadour. There it is, again, similar colour to the others that I've just shown you on the lipstick front. And the reason I've chosen this is because I like using it with my Beauty Pie lip balm. So I'll slick a bit of lip balm on, and then I'll pop this around and maybe even do a bit of colouring. And it just gives me a nice light, nudie type lip, but with a bit of colour and a bit of pigment. And it feels beautiful on the skin. Having said that, the Charlotte Tilbury pencils I've got are lovely as well, but I'm not really a lip pencil person. I don't use it on a regular basis because I suppose I use the liquid lipsticks. So it's not something I reach for a lot, but I did want to mention it because I do like using it occasionally. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far. It's been a marathon, but I've absolutely loved doing it. And thank you to Tina for suggesting it. What a lovely idea. And please go visit her, say I sent you, and give her all my love. And let me know in the comments whether you have any top 3 products. I did find it really difficult to choose them, I must say. And none of them, or most of them, won't be much of a surprise to you if you have watched this channel before. And just before you go, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It would mean the world to me. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're doing really well, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Bye.